Well, welcome everyone to this afternoon's webinar. Today, the Horticulture Code of Conduct, brought to you by VegPRO, the Vegetable Industries Education and Training Initiative, and funded through Hort Innovation. Today, we're lucky enough to be joined by Jill Briggs and Jacqueline Sutherland from the Horticulture Code Consultants to walk you through today. And a bit of an interactive session. We're around a table all together and we'll run it as a bit of a discussion and Q&A base. And at any time you can send your questions through to us as well. So a little bit of housekeeping before we do get started. My name is Carl Larsen from RMCG. I'll be facilitating and moderating the session today. And you'll see, if you haven't joined one of these webinars before, a bit of a side panel there on the go-to webinar control panel. To walk you through those, you can see other attendees on the line. There's also some handouts, a copy of the presentation, and also the code as it relates to growers, which I'll let Jill and Jacqueline talk through shortly. And you'll see too, there's an area for you to type in your questions. So those questions come directly through to us. And at any time, we've got breaks during the presentation for you to put those in. And I'd encourage you to do so. And we'll also have some time at the end to wrap up and talk about next steps as well. So what's really important for us to understand before we get into the content and the nitty-gritty is just to understand who's online. So we've got a poll here that we'll just launch now. And the poll is asking, how much experience do you have with the Horticulture Code of Conduct? You can answer one of 4 options there: lots, a bit, not much, or none but keen to know more. If you just wanted to fill that out now, and we can share back the results with you shortly. So we've got most of the votes in now. I'll just close that poll and share the results back with you. So we've got quite a strong cohort, around 2/3 of us with not much, which is great because you're on the line, and hopefully we can address some of your queries and outstanding concerns today around the code itself. A few with a bit, just under 1/4, and a couple none but keen to know more. So look, that's great. Thanks very much for completing that. That just gives us a bit of an understanding of who's on the line. And we'll run this like a digital workshop. So while we're in the room and you're out there, let's try and get some connectivity going and some Q&A along the way. But having said that, I'll hand over now to Jill and Jacqueline to take us through the presentation.
Thanks, Carl. Great.
And we'll touch base along the way.
Yeah, good. I'm assuming everybody's hoeing into some sandwiches out there. So my name's Jill Briggs, and I'm part of a team with Jacqueline Sutherland, and we're the Hort Code Consultants, and we've been working in this space for well over 18 months now. And our session today is to give you some introductory and overview of what the code's about and helping you to understand where are the areas you need to be focused on.
Great. Hi. Good afternoon. My name's Jacqueline, and Jill and I are very excited today. We're talking about the Horticultural Code of Conduct.
Yeah, great. So we're going to be flicking through slides for you. So that's who we are. We're neutral, we're not aligned. We're knowledge brokers who want to ensure that you've got a really positive transition through into this new space. But we're not going to be providing legal advice, so we'll be looking at the questions you pop up as well. And if we think that it strays into that legal advice area, then we're probably going to have to sit on the questions. But we're also in the space with all the players. That's right, isn't it, Jacqueline?
Oh, Jill, it's an interesting point you raise. We're not aligned with anyone. We deal with the government, with the horticultural advisor. We liaise with the ACCC,
yep,
with all the players,
yeah,
the traders, exactly.
Yeah, great. So let's start, shall we? So we're going to cover off on the 4 areas that are on in front of you now. We're going to be looking at trading under the new Horticulture Code. We're going to be talking a little bit about your obligations under the new code. We're going to be providing you with some information that helps you move your business towards being compliant. And we're going to talk a little bit about penalties. Now, we're going to be doing a lot of toing and froing, Jacqueline and I. So we're probably going to be asking questions of each other as well. So your questions that come up, we might actually end up answering them for you. So I hope that's okay with you and you can fly with the process. Nice to have so many people with us today. Terrific. So Jacqueline, would you like to start with what this is all about?
Absolutely, Jill. What this is about is law that's come under the Australian Competition and Consumer Law. What's important about that is this is a code that has teeth. It's law. It comes into completeness on the 1st of April 2018, which is really not too far away.
No, absolutely.
So it's important that everyone understands their obligations under this law.
Yeah, great. So we'd like to also thank VegPRO and Hort Innovation for making this happen, and we've got other workshops that are happening over the next month or so. So thanks to VegPRO for seeing the value in doing this. We certainly see the value in it, and I'm sure you will by the end of it. So we've given you, I'm hoping that some of you have accessed the materials that we've provided for you. So we've provided you with 2 documents that might look a little bit like this when you've printed them off. This one with the coat of arms is actually the code, and your copy has got grower highlighted the whole way through the code, and that will help you understand where the key points are for you. We're not going to flick through the pages today, but we are going to be referencing sections of the code. So feel free to look at it, but we're not going to be saying go to page 67 or anything like that today. And then the other document you've got is the printout of the PowerPoint slide that you're looking at the moment, and we'll be running through that as well. So that's to tell you about that. Anything else to add in there, Jacqueline?
No, look, I think that's just really good. Then people have got it as a reference.
Yeah, great.
Okay, well, let's kick off.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Go, Jacqueline.
Well, it's now 2018, and the importance of that, as Jill and I know, is this new code came into effect on the 1st of April 2017. It was the new code. During the last 12 months, there's been what's called a transition phase, and what that means is that certain parts of the code came into effect, but it totally comes into effect on the 1st of April 2018. And that's the purpose of this seminar, to walk through the obligations that everyone has under the code.
Yeah. So by the 1st of April this year, everybody, no exceptions, have to be operating under this new code.
Spot on, Jill.
Okay.
Spot on.
So I'm not good at maths, but there's not many more sunrises between now and the 1st of April. Oh, wrong keyboard. I'm clicking on the wrong keyboard.
Okay. Well, this is an interesting slide, Jill, because it actually goes through what the Horticultural Code is about. There's 2 platforms of the code. The first thing is it's to regulate trade. Look, I don't know about you, but I like concrete examples. So I say, so Jill, you're the grower, okay, and I'm the trader. So what it means is that it regulates our business relationships. It offers transparency. You're growing the product, I'm the trader, but you know what's going to happen in our contractual arrangements.
Yeah. Okay. So we both know.
Yeah, it's clarity, it's transparency.
Yep.
All right. And then this is the second part of the code. It's about offering mediation. It doesn't mean that if we have a hiccup in our commercial arrangement that we can't pick up the phone and have a conversation. But what the code is saying is that this is a process for you under dispute resolution to try and resolve it by mediation.
Right.
So they're the 2 planks, the 2 important parts of this new code.
Yep. And I suppose just quickly, some of the history is that this was put in place because the growers felt that there was a lack of transparency.
Yes.
So A covers off on that, providing more transparency.
And in terms of the mediation, it's available to people in a very quick, easy and cheap format.
Yeah, great. And we'll talk more about both of those bits. We'll definitely talk about B as we move towards the end of the webinar today. So we're going to cover off on these 6 topics today. We're going to look at what dealing in good faith means. We're going to cover off on traders' terms of trade and give you some understanding of that. We're going to talk in a little bit of detail about horticultural produce agreements. We're going to look at conduct, resolving disputes and keeping records. And we're going to keep to time. So we'll make sure that you're done when you're supposed to be done. So Jacqueline, moving on.
Yep, okay,
Yeah.
let's
start with the definition.
Okay, all right. Well, look, as I just said before, I like concrete examples. So if you're a grower, so what it means if you're a grower, that you grow horticultural produce.
Ah.
That's what it is. And in its most basic terms, it would be unprocessed fruit and vegetables.
So horticultural produce is fruit and veg that has had no processing done to it.
And it excludes nursery items.
Oh,
like,
okay.
for example, cut flowers, trees, shrubs.
Yeah, okay. So I figured you all get it. It's taken us a while to get it, but that's the definition of a grower, and that's throughout the code. So when grower comes up, that's what it refers to. So let's start with the first part about dealing in good faith.
Okay.
So what does this mean, and where else is dealing in good faith?
Dealing in good faith, it's a commercial term, unwritten law, but it's something you need to abide by, and it's in the code now. So what would be an example of, Jill, if you're a grower and I'm a trader, what I must do under the code is act within good faith with you. So what does good faith mean? What it actually means is that I have to act with you without duress. Duress is just kind of a very old-fashioned word, but what it means is it can't be a financial duress, it couldn't be a physical duress. Right? I have to act honestly with you, okay? And not arbitrarily. Now, an example could be of that is that if I bought your produce and I said, oh, I might sell it really cheaply to Carl, but I could have sold it to someone else at a proper market price. Then I've acted arbitrarily, I've not acted honestly. But also when you're dealing with good faith, if I'm a trader and, for example, I don't have to act against my best interest. And what that means is we've got a contract together. You know that I'm going to pay you under your HBA of a certain grade of your product. So if your product is a grade A, some weeks, but on another week it's grade C, I can pay you grade C. So I'm acting in good faith, even though it's
there's a price difference.
There's a price difference. Because I'm still acting honestly, without duress, and in good faith.
Great.
And just to pick up that point, Jacqueline, HPA, for those that don't know, there's a few acronyms throughout here, so we'll try and just step back.
Thank you
Acronym monitor.
It means horticultural produce agreement, and under the new code, everyone has got to have a horticultural produce agreement.
And we'll give some more details about that. Horticultural produce agreements, also known as HBAs. So one of the things that we've learned over the last 18 months being immersed in this code is the concept of obligation. And it's really important for people to understand that throughout the code, there is mutual obligation. So already at the front end of the code, you can see that you have an obligation as well as the trader having an obligation. Now, we're going to talk about what does a trader mean in a moment, but you can see that already a trader needs to deal with a grower in good faith, and equally a grower must deal with a trader in good faith. So if you've heard any of those rumours out there that it's all about the trader, that they're the ones that have to be responsible, it's not. It's a mutual obligation arrangement here. So know that you can be penalised financially. So Jacqueline, do you want to give some further detail about that?
Okay, Jill wants a concrete example that you're the grower, okay, and I'm the trader. And I say to you, look, I'm not going to trade with you, Jill, if you make me have a HBA. Well, you're liable and I'm liable. Neither of us can say, well, they would trade with me without a HBA. Okay. So the obligations it goes both ways. We have to deal good faith together.
Great.
All right.
So just remember that if you keep hearing that it's the trader's responsibility, it's actually your grower's responsibilities as well. So we're now going to move on to traders' terms of trade. So I'm going to give a very quick overview, and then I'll kick to Jacqueline to talk through some more detail around that. So the trade of terms of trade, I'm going to ask a few questions that you can see. So have you located your wholesale traders' terms of trade? So people are still using the word wholesalers because that's the common reference point, but actually under the new code, they're called traders. But do you know what your traders' terms of trade? Are you sure that the traders' terms of trade are compliant with the new HCC, the Horticulture Code of Conduct? And the next thing is, why do you think it's important? So our questions actually are about making sure that you know that there's a trader's terms of trade set up and that you've seen them, that your trader has got them publicly. And they can be found, they should be publicly available, websites, their business website, the market website, or they actually should, if they can't do it that way, they should be posted somewhere where people can see them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that can't be in the back room on the
No.
filing cabinet facing the wall. It's got to be so that everyone in the marketplace knows what your trading terms are. So if we talk about the example of you're the grower, okay. So when you're dealing with a trader, the trader has got everything published so that you know, do you want to deal with that trader or not? Do you agree with their terms of payment, of insurance, storage, service provision?
Yes.
So that's what you're looking at. And under the contents of the terms of trade, the code sets out what must be included. So the trader could include other things in the terms of trade, but what the code sets out, it's actually clause 11, it says what must be included. Okay, just a few examples are, and this is like for Jill, for example. If Jill is a grower, Jill wants to know if she is trading with me, if I'm the trader, whether I'm acting as an agent or a merchant or both.
So will we flip to that?
Yeah, I think actually it's probably a good idea to actually look at, when you're talking about traders, it's a term that actually means two things. You're either acting as an agent or a merchant. Now, the simplest way for me to always think about who is an agent is if I'm a real estate agent. So if I want to on-sell your baby leaf, for example, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sell it to Carl.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm going to be just like a real estate agent. So the property will pass from Jill through me and you'll own it, and then you'll pay me and I'll pass the money on to Jill.
Yep.
Okay. And I get a commission. All right. And it's really important for Jill to know whether I'm an agent or a merchant. I'll go in a minute who's a merchant, because it's about risk.
Absolutely.
So what it means, like, for example, if you were selling your house, you would still need to keep the insurance going to Carl buys the house. Okay. So what's different in that is that if I'm a merchant, I'm going to buy all your baby leaf.
Yes.
All right. Then I buy it. And then when I'm storing it, it's mine.
It's your risk.
It's my risk.
Yep.
And then under the trader's terms, you're going to know when you're going to get paid.
Absolutely.
Okay. So just to recap on that, you need to know whether I'm an agent. Agent, always think real estate agent.
Yes.
That's kind of quite a good analogy. And if you're thinking about a merchant, it means that you sell it to me and then you don't have to worry about it anymore.
The risk has been removed.
Yeah, the risk has been removed.
Yep. Okay. So in the trader's terms of trade in the document, it's really important to know, as Jacqueline said, whether you're dealing with an agent or a merchant. But in the Code of Conduct, they are sometimes referred to as traders. But you need to know the difference between an agent or a merchant. Yep. And there are clauses in the code that are specific to agents and specific to merchants. Is there anything else there, Jacqueline, that you'd add in there?
Look, I think that there's a number of points. One, I would think about bad debts.
Oh, yeah.
So, for example, in your horticultural produce agreement, which we call a HPA, if I'm going to get your baby leaf and then on-sell it to Carl, so I never own the produce, what happens if Carl doesn't pay for that baby leaf? You'll be thinking, well, where's my money? I still don't have my goods. Well, in the HBA, you'll be setting out what is meant to happen with bad debts. But then if we swap to the other side, if I'm acting as a merchant and I've bought the produce from you, so it's mine now, and then I sell it to Carl, I give it to Carl, and Carl doesn't pay me, well, then that's no longer part of your transaction.
I'm not worried about
You're not worried about
the transaction is you two.
Yeah. And you'd be thinking about other things like insurance.
Yes.
For example, if I'm an agent and I've got your produce and it's in my care, well then
I want to know what your insurance
you want to know,
policy
can you
is.
cover all it? Fire, flood, damage to my storage sheds.
Good. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of context around the difference between an agent and a merchant, and we'll push on to the next So we've covered off on that stuff.
Yeah.
Yep. So wondering whether there's any questions there, Carl, that you'd like to ask
There is.
us.
Yeah, we've got one through from Mohammed Nosha, so thanks for sending that through. The question is, can a trader be both a merchant and an agent?
Yes, it needs to be particular.
Good question.
It is it's a pivotal question. It has to be set out what you're being at the time.
Yes.
So that when Jill deals with me when she's selling me the baby lead, she knows that she's acting, that we're dealing together as an agent, so that on her behalf I'm selling it to Carl.
Yep.
Okay. And then on another day I'm acting as a merchant.
Yes.
Because then you know that whether Carl pays me, it's got
Nothing.
no reference to you at all. So
that's right.
you couldn't actually give me your product and not know what's happening.
That's right.
Yeah. So
That's
you can
right.
be both. It just has to be set out. Yeah.
That's a really good question, Mohammed. Thanks for that.
Great.
Totally get that question. And then I suppose the other question, one of the perennial questions that you may have missed when we started the session off, is understanding what's the real purpose for the code. So Jacqueline, can we talk about that purpose again? What are the two main purposes for the Code of Conduct?
Okay. The two main purposes of the Code of the Conduct is about transparency, so that you know what's happening. And Mohammed's question, and actually just later on, if you have a look at clause 14, that'll give you, that's where it is in the code, where a trader cannot act both as an agent and a merchant under the one horticultural produce agreement. So therefore you know exactly what's happening. So for the purposes of the code, it's about transparency and clarity. And the second part, if there is a hiccup, you've actually can have mediation. So there's the two parts of the code.
And then the other perennial we get every time, Jacqueline, is, so are the supermarkets in the code? I hear a nation grinding its teeth when that question gets asked. But Jacqueline, are the supermarkets included in this code?
No, they're excluded, Jill. The people that are covered by this code are growers
and traders.
And also the other people that excluded is people who sell directly for export.
Yeah, right. So exports out, supermarkets are out. Yeah. I can hear you groaning. Don't worry, we can hear you groaning.
And so we've revisited the purpose too, between growers and traders, is to revisit what is a grower.
Oh, yeah, good.
Just to make sure there's some clarity there.
Good.
So a grower is someone who grows horticultural produce. And I think it's always good to look at what is a horticultural produce. Okay, and you're looking at things that is unprocessed fruit, vegetables, mushrooms, other edible fungi, unprocessed nuts, unprocessed herbs, other unprocessed edible plants, but excludes nursery items. So we're looking at shrubs, trees, cut flowers.
Okay, so more the ornamental side. No, that's great. Thank you for that.
Great. So thanks for the questions, folks, and we'll push on to the next bit, which is about the horticultural produce agreements, and we've been using the acronym HPAs, and you might have heard that acronym thrown around. It stands for Horticultural Produce Agreements.
Good. And I think, Jill, the point you brought up is that everything in the code, both parties are equal, growers and traders. Okay, so
good.
I can't trade with you if you don't have a horticultural produce agreement. Is it all right? I'm going to use HPA from now on.
Hopefully you've got an HPA, horticultural produce agreement.
And you can't trade with me if I don't have a horticultural produce agreement. We've both got to have it together.
Yeah, right. Okay.
All right.
So will I just do the general bit at the front end? So an agreement must be in writing. So Jacqueline and I would like to make it really clear about what in writing means. So in writing might be a piece of paper that comes to you via Australia Post that you sign off on and then send back to whoever it was, your trader, via Australia Post. But it could be simple, and I don't have my mobile phone sitting with me because I don't want it to ring in the middle of a webinar. But it could be as simple as you and the trader have discussed stuff, you've got it sorted out, they send it to you as an attached document and an email, and you text back to them saying, got it, agree with it. But the important thing around that, Jacqueline, is you need to have it recorded. So you need to take a screenshot or you need to download the image so that you've got a paper trail. We'll talk about reporting later on as we go through it, but it's really important that in writing can be a variety of things, but you've been able to track the paper trail, the decision-making trail.
You're absolutely right, Phil. So what it means is that years gone by, or maybe more recent times, you've had verbal agreements.
Yeah, okay.
But under this new code that came in last year, and there's been a series of codes over the years, but now you can't have verbal agreement.
No.
People have to have terms of trade. There's got to be a horticultural
produce agreement that's signed and agreed to by both of us.
Yeah, and as you say, it has to be in writing, it has to be accepted. And then it goes through the other information that has to be included. Under 16, what it's saying is there's actually 17 clauses that have to be included in the HPA. It doesn't mean that, for example, you couldn't have more. Depending on what your industry is, you may want to be really particular about the storage of your goods. So there's nothing about the code that doesn't say that you can't put more information in your HPA. What it's actually saying is that at 16 from A to Q is these are all
have to be.
It has to be. I'll just give you a little bit
of that's great.
Information about that. It has to say whether you're acting as an agent or a merchant, because you really want to know that. Other things you want to know is about delivery. How is delivery to take place? How do you vary the agreement? What's the process? It maybe will vary within 7 days within notice. That type of thing. It's got about pooling. That's really new. Actually, why don't we tell the story about our pooling experience?
Okay. So Jacqueline and I, in our research at the front end of the Horticultural Code of Conduct, decided to go and visit an unnamed, and hopefully you won't be able to identify it, retail outlet. And so it was retail, it wasn't wholesale. But when we walked into their back area, we came upon a couple of crates of apples. And it was really clear that if the retailer had pulled the product, then that was probably their decision. But if the product had been pulled from a trader's perspective, they shouldn't have been doing it, because it was very clear that they weren't the same species, they weren't the same quality of apples sitting in this one container. And so our learning about pooling was that you have to have the same product, the same quality. Yeah.
So they're things that are actually under 16 and they're must-haves.
Yes.
A to Q, but you could add other things in that is particular to your industry. So when you're looking at 17, you're looking at additional matters that are by agents, and just an example of that would be commissions. And then 18, for example, would be about merchants. That's how you would actually be paid, what formula you decide.
Yeah. So can we flick to that question, because that's a really great question.
Yeah, so we've had another one come in.
You are on fire.
So who is responsible to initiate the agreement? Is it
the grower?
Just the grower? Is the question.
Well, what we know is that whoever initiates it, it has to be in place. So you have to have it in place. So as a grower, you need to know that your product that you're sending off to market has come under an HPA. You can't just send it off. So you need to have your bottoms covered around that sort of stuff. But who could initiate it?
And what we say is, in terms of your agreements, we can't give any legal advice, accounting advice or financial advice. To speak to your advisors about what's going to be the process that's going to work for you.
Yeah. But you have to have it in place. So good question. Our encouragement over these last 12 months is get your ducks lined up, because the 1st of April is heading at us pretty quickly. So we've talked about the difference between understanding that there are two components of traders, that you could either be an agent or a merchant.
That's right. And I think it's also really important, because it talks about ownership. Who owns the product? And when you're talking about ownership, you're talking about risk.
Yes, that's right.
And how you get paid.
Yeah, that's right. So just remember that your HBA you need to be really clear about whether you're working under agent rules within the code or merchant rules. Yeah, so that's why it's really important to understand, are we operating in a merchant's agreement or an agent's agreement, so that you can actually be compliant with the code.
That's right.
With your HPA.
That's right.
Yep. Yeah, good.
That doesn't mean, Jill, if I just give you an example of that, is that you're dealing with me. Sometimes you deal with me as an agent.
Yeah,
and then HPA,
today.
Yep, and then another HPA, I act as a merchant.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But they've got to be separate.
They've got to be
they're
separate. You can't operate as both under the one horticulture produce agreement. So there's some of the clauses you can see in front of you that are related to the HPAs.
That's right, Jill. And I think we've covered 12 to 18.
Yep.
And what 19 is saying, you can't have a horticultural produce agreement that's in conflict with the code.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So you mentioned before, Jacqueline, that you can add things into it, but you can't leave things out that are in here, in the code.
That's right.
Yeah. So, and whose responsibility is that? Well, you've got mutual obligation there. So don't ever forget that this is a mutually obligated code. So you and the trader need to know what's in.
That's right. And Jill, for example, if you're the grower, and if I wanted you to sign a contract that wasn't in accordance with the code, well then we're both responsible for that. So
absolutely. Absolutely.
It goes both ways.
Yeah, yeah. And what's the penalty if you go against the code?
Well, when you look throughout the code itself, it actually has penalty points. The penalty points actually come from the 1914 Criminal Code, and it's about penalty units. And currently the penalty units are such that when you do a quick add up of 300, look, there's a maximum that you can get to. It's in the thousands. Where people can be guided from is the ACCC's enforcement policy.
Yes,
so
okay.
It will be the ACCC who'll be
doing
the enforcement. It's their instrument of law.
Yeah, okay. I hope you're enjoying your lunch. Although I think we've got some Western Australians online as well, so it might be morning tea or something. Yeah. So now we'll just talk a little bit about the cooling off period. So Jacqueline, would you like to provide a little bit of detail about cooling off?
Sure. When we look at clause 20, that gives an explanation about when are the cooling off periods. So in any contractual relationship, you and I have got a contractual relationship, you're the grower, I'm the trader, is that we have the ability to have a cooling off period, that the contract will come to an end, and the mechanism for that is set out in 20.
Yeah, okay. And is there some days in that cooling off period? Is it 14 days?
14 days, and that depends on how long the contract is for.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so clause 20 will set that out.
Yeah, great. Okay, so we'll now move on to conduct. So this is this fourth section of the code when you're doing your bedtime reading tonight, because we're sure you will. These are the areas that you might want to have a look at as well. So once again, you can see that there are parts of the code that are general for both traders and for traders to adhere to. And Jacqueline and I just gave you an example of the pooling. We might revisit that again. But then there are specifics that are for agents, arrange clauses that are relevant for an agent and a grower arrangement. And then there are clauses that are relevant for a merchant and grower agreement. So Jacqueline, do you want to talk us through some of these bits up here?
Yeah, great, Jill. So when we're looking at conduct, we're looking at part 4. So with traders, and traders means both agents and merchants, clauses 21 to 24 apply to both those people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So traders must trade under a HPA, so we can't have any agreement we don't have a horticultural produce agreement. It talks about, acceptance by traders, delivery, accepting and rejecting. What is the process for that? Because that's really important that everyone understands that produce could be rejected, but how is it rejected?
Yes.
Okay. Pooling of produce, that's fine as long as it actually accords with the code. Reasonable care. Now, what does reasonable care mean? So, for example, if, Jill, I'm getting your product, I cannot pick up your product in a van that's meant to be refrigerated and the refrigeration is not on. I deliberately didn't turn it on. That's not showing reasonable care. Or I've got the produce in my warehouse and I'm not monitoring it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have to have reasonable care. It doesn't mean that I have to have elite care, but it means that I need to always have reasonable care of your product.
Yep.
So that's for everyone. And then when you're looking at clauses 25 and 30, you're looking about agents and growers. Okay. So when I'm an agent, what I'm looking at is that I never own the property. So the payment, for example, is if I've got your produce and I'm on selling it to Carl, it's about when you will get your payment. What are my duties? What are my obligations? Pardon me. And reporting. So, for example, if I use January, that all of your baby leaf jewel that I have sold in January, I will report to you in late February. Obviously, I'm not going to report to you in mid-January because I haven't sold all your goods. So that's why that reporting period is always later.
Yeah.
Okay. Or also, the reporting period is all January, and the statement you'll actually get is in February.
Yeah.
Okay. And ownership, just to clarify that, I never own your goods as your agent. Yeah, but what's different then when you're looking at a merchant grower, so our relationship is different because I actually am going to own the goods. So you're very interested in what's the price and what's going to be the fee, when you're going to get your payment, and when it's going to be reporting about what I've bought from you and when I'm going to pay you. There's a real interrelationship in the code between most sections. And why this is really important, because there's the reporting section at the end in part 6.
Yeah.
And so you need to have all your documents in line because it's really very similar to the tax year or the tax reporting period of that 7 years.
Yeah. And when we've done these workshops around Australia, one of the things that people have pointed out to is that those reporting periods and those payment periods that you write into your HBA, you don't want to inadvertently contravene the code by not checking up on the dates. So you don't want to put into your HBA that you're going to pay someone before, the logic of the reporting period. Like just look at those details really carefully.
Jill, I think that's a really good point, because if you've actually got to give yourself time to get the bookkeeping in order. So, for example, if I have on-sold to Carl all the produce in January, I'm not going to do the reporting back to you on the 31st.
No, that's
it's going to be a little bit later.
Yeah. So just look at those details so that you're not inadvertently tripping yourself up and putting yourself in contravention of the code and your HBA, because you don't want little things like that to unplug you. You want it to work as smoothly as possible. And I suppose that brings us into,
I think, resolving disputes. I mean, under the code, it's really interesting, is that, say, for example, Jill, we've just started to trade together, or we've traded together for a long time, and we've got a dispute. Well, under the code is not saying that you can't resolve disputes in your normal way. And the normal way most people resolve disputes is to chat about it. So, look, that didn't go as quite as I expected. So we can do that. Under the code, we can actually resolve disputes in any way we want.
Yeah, right.
Where it changes is what the code also gives you the ability is to have mediation.
Okay. So what does that mean?
Well, you can have mediation, but there's kind of the in-between step. The in-between step is that we didn't resolve the dispute by trying to talk about it.
Yes.
Okay, so what I will then do is I'll write to you, give you a notice of dispute, and what the notice of dispute will say, look, this is what happened, this is not what I disagree with, and this is how I want to settle it.
Yeah,
Okay, so there's a time period for us to try and do that. If that doesn't work, then what we actually seek is mediation.
Yeah.
And then we actually have an independent person who would act as a mediator.
Yeah.
And that person is appointed by the mediation advisor. It's really a quick and easy system for people that can log on to the mediation advisor's site and get a mediation organised.
Yeah, okay. And who does the mediation advisor come under? Is that Is that a government body?
Oh, yes, a government body.
Okay.
And so they've set up a system so that there can be quick and easy dispute resolution in the horticultural space.
And is there some obligation that once you move into dispute resolution through the mediation advisor, is there some obligation to stick with it?
Oh, you need to stick with it.
Yeah, okay.
And the actual mediation can take place in a variety of ways. It can be in person, by phone, or you can have your representative.
Yeah, right. Okay. So the take home around that one is that we don't expect you to change your practices in your business. That if something goes wrong, you pick up the phone and you talk to the person at the other end and say that, you know, that didn't go particularly well, as Jacqueline said. That's not going to change. What the extra thing that's put in there is a mediation process that allows you to access a formal system that helps you through if you can't resolve the disputes.
That's right. And I think it's an enhanced system.
Yeah, it is.
It's been something that we've had there before too.
Yes.
So this is an enhancement of the system.
Yeah.
The system.
Yeah.
Okay.
Terrific. So that's what we expect you to look like every time you're dealing with your traders. You're always going to look smiley and happy. Some of you might recognise some of those faces if you've done other work with me. Remember, you can resolve the disputes however you would like to, but remember that you've got the mediation process. We've covered off on that one. So any other questions? Have we got any? So we often have things written to us. Have we got some?
We do, yeah. So we've had some come through. So I guess it would be good to just revisit that dispute resolution and what's available as a grower, how you can resolve disputes with a trader. We've put our grower hat on.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And it would be either grower or trader.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah,
both
nice.
people can utilise this system. It's
Yeah.
set up by the government.
Yeah.
Quick and easy.
Yeah.
And the people they should be contacting is the mediation advisor under the Horticultural Code.
So got that one. So mediation advisor if you needed to do that.
And that
So
appears to be an
anything-
enhancement on the previous
yeah,
arrangement, doesn't it?
absolutely it is.
Absolutely.
And it's much more accessible.
Mm.
So it wasn't so accessible and not so straightforward. So and it's been put in there because the momentum for the Horticulture Code was driven by growers. Like that's where it stemmed from, that the growers in the industry said we need to have some of this stuff sorted out. We need to have clarity and we need to know how we can resolve disputes if we can't resolve them just between ourselves.
That's right.
And I'd imagine a lot of disputes come out of bad debt or financial matters. So, I mean, in terms of the responsibilities on agents, what responsibility do they have to chase bad debts?
Great question, Carl. It relates to what's in the HPA.
Right. So again, that's your fallback.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's the fallback.
Absolutely. So you need to know all that stuff. You need to understand what's written in the HPA. You need to have a conversation with your agent. If they've given you something that you think actually that's not going to work for us, then the HPA is actually a conversation to start off with.
It's negotiated.
Absolutely.
Negotiated contract.
So it's really worthwhile getting to know that sort of stuff before you start signing on the bottom of dotted lines. Yeah.
And a lot of those aspects we covered before in previous slides ago around conduct.
Yeah,
I imagine they're really important to have in the HPA.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. So the bottom line about that sort of stuff is if it's in the Horticulture Code of Conduct, it has to be in your HPA. You can't say, no, we're going to miss F.
Like, we're not going to have good faith.
Yeah, it has to be.
It has to be.
Yeah, good.
No, great.
So the last little bit we're going to touch on, and then you can all go and get your coffee, is to talk about keeping of records. So tell us about keeping of records, Jacqueline, and why it's incredibly important.
Well, I think this slide is actually very good because it has two forms of keeping records. It's got a paper form and it's also got a computer form. You might want to be thinking about the cloud too, because what could happen is that you could be audited.
Yeah, okay.
So if you're audited in 7 years' time, you've actually got to be able to provide inspection of your records.
Yes.
Where are your HPAs?
Yeah.
Whether you're the person who's paid out the money or received the money.
And that's why when we talked to you before about putting stuff in writing, and actually getting a screenshot, if that's what you just decide to do about acknowledgement of the HPA, is make sure there's a paper trail, because you do want to have all your ducks lined up if anybody asks you some questions. But I'd like to share with you the concept of software packages. So our experience is that a lot of you use various different software packages for your record keeping. MyOb, QuickBooks, or any other industry-specific record keeping software is not obligated to be code compliant. So it's your job to have a look at how you're keeping your records, the systems that you're using to keep your records, to make sure that they're code compliant. MyOb is probably not even aware of the Horticulture Code of Conduct. So if you're relying on some other external systems for keeping your records, our encouragement would be to have a look and make sure that the system that you're using allows you to be code compliant about keeping your records. 7 years, backing it up. I'm sure some of you know about people's offices being flooded or burnt down, which is incredibly unfortunate, but you need to make sure that your records are well and truly organised.
Just on record keeping, we've had a question coming from Monica just around reporting. The requirements for reporting as a merchant back to a grower.
That's right. Well, when you look under the HPAs,
good question, Monica.
It's a great question. Under Horticultural Produce Agreement, there is the general requirements about what's in the Horticultural Produce Agreement. And if you're actually a merchant under Clause 18, it actually particularises what must be specified by the merchants when they're reporting.
Okay.
So relying on an invoice is not good enough anymore.
Right. Okay.
So
that's not.
That's a transaction of payments. That's not good enough. That will be part of your record keeping, but that's not invoice is not an HPA.
Okay. So whereas that may have been fine prior to 1 April of
17,
an invoice from a merchant to a grower is now no longer compliant under the new code.
That's right.
Okay. So hopefully that clarifies that question for you, Monica.
Yeah. And we understand that there could be a lot of work that needs to be done. Our encouragement is to get your skates on, because the 1st of April is coming up pretty quickly. Remember that we can't give you legal advice for your businesses, but your legal team or your accountant might be the be the first stop. If this is a bit of gobbledygook, then that might be where you move to. So we've covered off on that sort of stuff. So we're actually finished, Carl.
Great.
Yeah.
Look, I think firstly, that's been fantastic to walk through the code step by step and cover those 6 key areas.
Yeah, great.
One thing that we commonly get asked out in the field and at the market is particularly around the horticultural produce agreements and just what they have to cover, because they seem to be embedded in each step of the way.
Absolutely.
And the important fallback document.
Absolutely.
Might just be worth revisiting exactly what's required and what that means, what an HPA means and what needs to go in.
Yeah. So to start all of that off, there are templates out there. So we know that some of you have probably seen some templates that have been distributed by various different organisations. They will have done a lot of work around that. That's up to you to access. We haven't seen them, we don't know about them, and we couldn't give you any advice on whether they're solid or not. But our advice is have a look. So the details around the HPAs.
The details about the HPAs, it's always about, it's a contract between parties. Contracts are subject to negotiation.
Yes, good.
Yeah, always subject to negotiation. We can't give people particular advice because we don't know their circumstances.
No.
So what we say is that speak to the people that you normally see who give you advice, lawyer, accountant, financial advisor. I think the real take-home message is that you must have a horticultural produce agreement, and it must be applicable to the code, and you can add other things into it as long as you don't exclude any of the mandatory requirements of the code.
That's right.
Great.
Yeah.
No, that's really good to cover, and I think highlights the importance of negotiation
Absolutely.
and having that open
Absolutely.
communication,
Absolutely.
as you would have done before.
Absolutely.
But,
it's now on a piece of paper. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
In terms of changing agents and merchants, how do you best deal with that? Is that something that's clear cut, or it's really case by case basis?
It's definitely case by case. It's produce by. So one of the other questions we had is, do I have to have a separate HBA for each of my products that I grow? No, you don't. You don't. But you might have spec sheets sitting behind your HBA that particularises your broccoli or your carrots. You don't have to have a separate HBA for
and that
each
could
of
cover
them.
things like storage,
Absolutely,
and logistics.
absolutely, absolutely. The front part of the HBA has to adhere strictly to the new code. You can't miss any of that out. And then if you're moving from one agent to another, if you've ended one contractual arrangement with an agent and you're moving to another agent, then you're going to have to get another HBA drawn up.
Great.
And,
Good fallback.
And it has to be compliant.
It has to be compliant.
As is the code.
Absolutely.
The 1st of April.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So, look, a lot of information there. My brain is fuller than it was an hour ago. Top 3 take-homes for people on the line, if they were going to remember anything tonight when they're doing their bedtime reading or going to open that negotiation with traders, what would you say that the top 3 take-homes are?
So you go 2, I'll go 1, Jacqueline.
Okay, all right. What they would need to do is to make sure in terms of all of their dealings now are actually code compliant on the 1st of April.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
So that's the one thing that I would say must be code compliant now. Yeah.
And for me, it's know that it's a negotiation process, but there has to be a piece of paper at the end of it that both parties have signed, and to make sure that your record keeping systems are tickety-boo, because you don't want to get halfway through this year and think, gosh, I should have been keeping records about that. You need to start keeping, practice now, get it happening now. Yeah.
Because that's quite a task to do retrospectively.
Absolutely. Retrospective record keeping would be a real headache.
Great. So compliance dates with the code, record keeping,
absolutely.
The top 3, I think that's excellent.
And negotiation. And remember, it's a conversation with a at the end.
No, that's excellent.
Yeah.
Well, look,
terrific.
Jill, Jacqueline, thank you very much for your expertise and input. Hopefully everyone on the line has both got something out of that and is a bit clearer going forward. This webinar is part of a broader national roadshow by VegPRO, delivered by Jill and Jacqueline. So they're in East Gippsland in Victoria later this week.
Tomorrow.
In Lindenau and Maffra.
Yep.
And then off to the Territory. To Coolalingga and Humpty Doo
on Tuesday next week.
So the idea behind this webinar session was to reach those people that might not be within the vicinity of a face-to-face session. It is being recorded, so there's a resource there to go back. If you missed something and you want to particularly highlight something or have it available to other staff in your business, please feel free to do so. So that webinar recording will be on the VegPRO website. Or if you have the chance to attend one of the face-to-face sessions, maybe there's some further Q&A over the coming weeks if that's where you are located.
Terrific.
All right, well, that brings us within the hour.
Thanks, everyone.
We've kept our commitment to keep to time. So, look, thanks very much for attending, and hopefully we'll be in touch soon. Thanks, everyone.
Ciao.
Bye.
Bye.